It is now time to move on to our belonging and community conversation, led by Brett Cook Disney. Brett Cook is an interdisciplinary artist and educator who uses storytelling as a vehicle to distill complex ideas and creative practices to transform outer and inner worlds of being. Cook's objects feature painting, drawing, photography, and elaborate installations to tell pluralistic stories that reinvent representation. His public projects typically involve community workshops featuring artists, integrated pedagogy, along with music, performance, and food to create a fluid boundary between art making, daily life, and healing. He published Who Am I in This Picture with Amherst College Portraits with Wendy Ewald in 2016. He also did that, in 2009, he published that last book. In 2016, he published Clouds in a Teacup. And in 2017, he was the director of social practice and pedagogy at SF State Healthy Equity Institute and a visiting professor in community arts and social practice and diversity studies at California College for the Arts. He's currently a trustee of A Blade of Grass, nurturing socially engaged art. He's my good friend. He's a surfer. He's a great dad. And he's a wonderful community member. Put your hands together for Brett Cook Disney.
So great to be here. I'm so excited, so honored by this privilege. And what I'd like to do is start by taking 3 breaths together. So if you could, put both your feet flat on the ground. You probably have things in your hands. You might be eating. Let's put both of our feet flat on the ground. Try to sit up straight if you can. Put your hands on your lap. And let's take 3 breaths together. So breathe in and out. In and out. In and out. Thank you. I did that for 3 reasons. The first reason I did that is I really wanted us to just be here in the present moment. You know, we've all been coming from lunch or been thinking about things we're going to do, and for this little time that we have together, I really wanted us to be the present. It's what someone, Thich Nhat Hanh, calls a meditation, that we were actually reflecting and acting in that moment. I'll talk more about him later. The second reason I did that is what we just did was a collaboration. So I used to think collaboration meant I have an idea, you help me do it, that's collaboration. Exactly. It's a joke. Now, I actually think collaboration means how do we look at the expertise we each have as individuals and combine that to make something greater than we can make by ourselves. So breathing is something that we all had to do, and we all did it in our own way. Some people use more of their diaphragm, some people use more of their belly, some people might have used more of the back of their lungs, but that was something that we all wanted to do. We did it together, and that was a collaboration. And so what I'm going to do today is also going to be a collaboration. So I'm going to take this, let me come down. And so in the spirit of collaboration, let me just start out by saying, when I say community, what's that make you think of? Just say out loud anything, and I'll parrot it back since I have the microphone. Love. Family. Care. Connection. What was that? Struggle. Belonging. People of color. Okay, fantastic, fantastic. Now, hold on. Who can tell me what would be one sentence that describes community? So we've all had some kind of like brainstorm words. What would be a sentence that describes community? So anybody. What is it? Living in mutual aid. My friend Evan's going to write that for us. So number 1, the sentence. Normally I would have you write this, but it's kind of a big room. So we're going to have my friend Evan write this. And while he's writing that, let me ask for a second sentence. Who can tell me a second sentence? I'm going to write over here. I think this part of the audience gets neglected. Let me come over here. What's another sentence that describes community? Anybody?
Shared interest.
Okay. Let me finish this one. Living in mutual aid, shared interests. We got for number 2. T.O. Evan? All right. So we have, in the spirit of a good teacher, community, living in mutual aid, community, shared interests, and community, a place to be seen. Awesome. Okay. What we have just made is a rubric. Who knows what a rubric is? Raise your hand if you know what a rubric is. Okay, what's a rubric? Who can tell me what a rubric is? Anybody? What is it? A theological construct. Could be one definition. I'm looking for a little different one. Who has another kind of suggestion? Thank you for that. What was that? A set of limiting criteria. I like to call it an assessment tool, maybe more simply. You could call it that too. I mean, the way that I think of it, most people, when they think of rubric, they think of A through F. That is a grading rubric. That's a rubric that I, as a teacher, have the privilege to assess your ability to complete an assignment. My issue with that kind of rubric is, first of all, it's hierarchical. So to have Fs, so you have As, there's this kind of structure where someone has to be unsuccessful to be successful. My other issue with that kind of rubric is that I have the privilege as the teacher to dictate that to you. Whereas in this case, we made a rubric that I didn't come up with. This is a rubric that was come up with together in this room that we're now going to look at some other things that aren't hierarchical. And now if we can dim the light, I'd like to show some slides. Is there a picture there? So, I can't see it. Oh, there we go. What's that make you think of? So here's a picture. Just shout out like we've been doing in the spirit of collaboration. What's this make you think of? Money, eating, dinner. What else? Colonization. Shout out colonization. White men. Okay. Very, very opinionated group. I like it. Okay. So this is the faculty club at Harvard University. And part of why I show you this is because this is how I grew up learning about art. This is before Kehinde and Amy did those pictures of the president and the first lady. I grew up with thinking about art was usually men. They're usually white men. And they're usually in places where people don't have access. So even here at the faculty club, if you're an undergraduate at Harvard, you can't go to the faculty club. You don't get in there. It's only for a very select few. And essentially, it's man, a little bit of landscape, and it's done in oil paint. Let's look at our rubric. Community, living in mutual aid? Maybe for them, maybe. Community, shared interest? Maybe not your interest, maybe not my interest. A place to be seen? Are you seen in there? Is that your aesthetic? It's not really my aesthetic. Okay, let's keep going. And so some of this comes from the notion of what Western artists come from. So this is actually in Oaxaca, but it kind of epitomizes this notion of Western art that a lot of it was around deities. They were mostly patriarchal. They were made of men bigger than you. And so even though that this is in a little pueblo in Oaxaca, in Coyotepec, I believe, it still kind of epitomizes these ideas. So then some people say, well, what if we did something outside? So here's a sculpture. This is Lafayette. This is in Brooklyn. And so again, it's a man. Again, he's bigger than you. The thing that I find interesting, in this case, he has a slave holding his horse. And then the other part that's really interesting is the place that everyone's connecting on this piece is actually the sword. So you can see the sword is shining because that's where people are touching the piece. And here's another one. This is in Cambridge. Here's even bigger than you. And you know what? We're going to put a fence around it so you can't touch it. And so these are the kind of things that I just learned about art unconsciously, that when I thought about art with a capital A, it had these kind of like parameters, even though I was really good at drawing, that I kind of internalized. So then someone said, well, what if we do murals? So here's a mural. It's done by Darrell Wells. It's in Los Angeles. It's multi-ethnic. It's got ancestors in it, has children in it. But a 16 by 16 foot painting outside a 16 by 16 foot painting in a gallery is called a painting. A 16 by 16 foot painting outside is called a mural. What is that about? Sometimes, like the piece up in the, I guess, upper right-hand corner from the Mission, the people who paint murals, they don't have MFAs in painting. They don't know about art history. That's not kind of where they come from. Sometimes, like that middle piece in Chicago by Oakland painter Johanna Potig, murals are for everyone. So unlike the faculty club or unlike a gallery or museum, they're outside where everyone has access. They're not commodified and you can touch them. And then last, like the piece Women Who Work for Change in Brooklyn with Dorothy Day and Shirley Chisholm, they have social messages. They have social content. They're really overt about the social agenda. And part of that comes from these three, kind of los tres grandes, they called them, these three muralists from Mexico. And this is actually Diego Rivera. He's kind of like the most known out of Siqueiros, Orozco, and Rivera. And these were people that were painters, and he's a painting that he did. It's actually a fresco where you put paint into the plaster. And here's this image of Zapata, the agrarian leader, and he's there with the workers, and they've killed the landowner. And so here you have this mural, but this is in the Museum of Modern Art. So for those three dudes, murals are kind of okay, but when you really think about the art world and when they think about murals, it's kind of pejorative. They're not really thought of as real art. And then you have graffiti. So graffiti comes from the Latin word graffiare, which means to scratch. Some people think those first cave paintings in Lascaux were people putting their names on the wall. Or you can go where Alexander the Great conquered, all the way through Europe, down into North Africa, and everywhere he went, he put his name. Or you can go into the cliffs of New Mexico, and in the cliffs, the conquistadors put their names in the cliffs. Or my favorite, you go to the Temple of Dendur in the Met in New York, so that they take this whole temple from Egypt, bring it over to the Metropolitan Museum, and in it you can see Alexander 1890. So tagging is not a new thing. People have been tagging a long time, okay? What we kind of think about graffiti is usually it's done in spray paint, and it was usually thought of as something kids of color did in urban settings. These two pieces from Schock and KR come from the golden era of Bay Area graffiti. This is in the late 80s, early 90s, and it's done with a couple colors. And then you go up another image, and this is in 93, and this is really classic graffiti, real hard blues. Classic because it's linear, it's an outline, you fill it in, you outline it, and classic because it's somebody's name. So this guy came, put his painting on there, has all his friend's name on the curb, and this is really classic graffiti. So is this graffiti? This is a guy, Barry McGee. So his paintings now in auction go for 6 figures. Okay, this is a Muni tunnel he did in 1993 in San Francisco. Is this graffiti? Someone would say, yep, it's in spray paint. It's not supposed to do it, doesn't have permission, that's graffiti. What about this? So this is in front of the Brooklyn Library. This is close to Prospect Park, kind of to the edge of that picture is primarily a West Indian Hasidic neighborhood at this time, that when the picture was taken. It's an old picture. But at the time this happened in the summer, people who came to New York told the Arts Commission that this was one of their favorite pieces that they've ever seen of public art. The kind of responses they had from people, they said they loved the cows that were all over New York City. So basically what they did was they copied something that had been done the year before in Chicago where they had artists paint cows, and then they just put them all over New York. And so I show you this because in my opinion, this is a really violent form of public art. Because part of the reason why I think people say that art doesn't matter is because a lot of times, like this, it doesn't. This is not, and this is obviously my opinion. But this was not something that community asked for. There are no cows in Brooklyn. If you know art history, that's supposed to be a riff off Mondrian, so there's not a lot of French people in this neighborhood. But it exists because somebody who had privilege and power dictated this outcome. So on the one hand, people think it's great, and on the other hand, that's why they don't have it in school, because this really has no relationship or no purpose or no advocacy, no meaning of belonging for the people who live in that community. And so is this graffiti. So if I took that pencil or that pen that Evan had and wrote on a bus, I would get in trouble. But if you are old school Crystal Pepsi, or you're Canon, or you're Nike, or you're some agency, you can have this privilege and you can put these things up there, and we don't call it graffiti. We may not call it art, but it still occupies this public space. So what's this make you think of? Nothing. What is it? Capitalism. What else? Sour milk. What was that? Okay, Middle America. Interestingly enough, this picture was taken in West Oakland. Okay. Opportunity for community gardens, yes. Let's look at our rubric. Living in mutual aid. Shared interest. A place to be seen. So part of why I wanted to show you this before I'm going to show you one of my favorite projects from one of my favorite kind of lessons was this idea that a lot of times we think of art about representation and about objecthood. And that can be true. But part of the issue with the cows and with this is not simply about that there is an image of a white man in a primarily African American neighborhood, but it's like, who has the privilege to dictate that they're going to have a billboard in their backyard? Who has the power to dictate that Clear Channel is going to be the biggest thing on the top of this and everything else is going to be subservient to that within the hierarchy of how the image is viewed? And so part of what I want to convey is that, in my opinion, art is not just because you can draw good. Art is about being able to make creative decisions that have an expressive impact. That is a conceptual type of art. And so this is kind of the context that I want to talk about when I talk about what I've come to share with you today. And so what I'm going to share with you today is about Durham. Who knows anything about Durham, North Carolina? Okay, shout out Durham. Ooh, ooh, go Durham. So, tell me something about Durham. Who can tell me anything about Durham? NCCU, go Eagles! Woo, woo. Okay. Well, before we go on with this too long, let me tell you about Durham. So Durham is a place in the southern part of the United States that, unlike a lot of the South, didn't have a really big slavery culture. After the Native Americans were, decimated, it was essentially European Americans and African Americans, and unlike the rest of the plantation kind of economy, in Durham they grew tobacco. So they need people to grow the tobacco. So they said, okay, you can help us grow this tobacco, and we're going to have you live way on the other side of town, and then we'll grow this tobacco together. But eventually what happened is those tobacco barons made a lot of money, and then they made universities like Duke and UNC, and the place grew until it became what they call the New South, where now there are people from Southeast Asia and from other parts of the world that have come there to study. Or now, migrant workers are the people that are coming from Mexico and Central America who are working in all those fields. And so now this place that used to be essentially this dichotomous, seemingly homogeneous cultural space has become super complex and reflective really of our country. And so the Bloods knew that the migrant workers didn't have papers, so they would steal money from them. And then Duke, I don't know if you know this, has the richest student body population in the country. So unlike Ivy Leagues, like people there aren't getting scholarships. So the kids that go to that school, people are like, look, don't go outside. Durham's got black people. Do not go off the campus. So when we reflect back on the things around the lacrosse incident or different incidents that are there, they're embedded in these issues of race and class that have really been a part of that place. So if you live in Durham, most of the people live in Durham, they don't like Duke. They root for UNC. Duke is not a place that's thought about favorably. And so I was brought there with this understanding that we have all these communities now that are in conflict. And we want you to come and do something that would help this community. And so this is what I wanted to share with you today, is really some best practices from this experience. And what we did is we brought people together that would never be in the same room. And we asked them, what is something authentic that you want to do that would reflect your place? And part of the skillfulness was having people in this kind of leadership model with me who were from that place. And so we got people to make recommendations in the spirit of collaboration. Everyone's contributions had value. You can see here's people making their recommendations. And then participants practice reflection and action. So who knows who Paulo Freire is? All right, big up yourself. So who's Paulo Freire? Anybody, give me something. Educator, pioneer, revolutionary. Great answer. He wrote this book a lot of people know, Pedagogy That Pressed. But part of why I bring him up in this context is he talked about true dialogue as reflection and action. That if you only have reflection without action, it can be inert. I always joke, less like academe, just kind of inert. But conversely, if you only have action without reflection, it can be violent. So really true dialogue is a balance of reflection and action. Like that first breath we took, that was a meditation. We didn't close our eyes and walk on water. We were reflecting on the act of breathing. And so instrumental to this work is dialogue, reflection and action. And people really thought about the things that they wanted, and this is what they came up with. These are their key values. These are the things that this community of people who would never be in the same room, all different classes, all different ethnicities, all different backgrounds, this is what they came up with. And then I went back and forth for a year after 5 years of starting this idea of learning about the place. So one time I would lecture at the art history department, go to the art department, spend time on the campus. The next time I would go to the mosque. I had just come back from living in Oaxaca, so then I would go and hang out with the dishwashers who are undocumented and spend time with them. And so eventually building all these relationships until we made this. And now I would like to roll the video, please.
Anywhere you see a line, just go right over the line, okay? So you will be drawing this. You're making this. What does it mean to have people be engaged? Is it something to say, well, I'll show them a movie or I'll put a piece of paper outside and they're engaged with it? Or does it mean that they help make it? Or they make all of it? And I'm just making it with them. So just take it up. And then try to line up the colors at the bottom. See where the bottom is kind of, it's above a little bit and kind of backwards.
From before I started at the center's had a relationship with the West End neighborhood and with the Quality of Life Project.
Quality of life was a way in which we realized that part of this West End was built upon relationships. Neighborhoods that have been working together with issues that related to the community.
We have engaged in various projects to document the stories and the ideas that have been shared with us as important stories for the neighborhood.
I'm Catherine in Southwest Central Durham. Quality of Life.
My name is Dorcas Bradley.
Quality of Life in Southwest Central Durham. Quality of life to me would be an environment
We've been real pleased at the products because they were generated by asking the community what they wanted. And the same is for what's happening with Brett's work.
Part of this is a research project that starts with learning about the place. Let's learn its geography, let's learn its climate, let's learn its cultural history. My work started the first time I came to Durham.
Brett spent a year getting to know this community.
We went to the Quality of Life Project steering committee and we said, we have this idea that we could take what we've learned about the history of the neighborhood, about the feeling and the soul of the neighborhood, and we could ask to become a part of a project that amplified that.
What I was hearing people saying is like, we want people to be more connected. We want people to be in relation. We want people to authentically know each other and care for each other. It's not about reacting to things that are negative. What's something positive that I want in the world? That drives a lot of my practice. We have the Y right here. See what that looks like. What these projects are doing is they're creating an architecture for lots of people to be invested in these things and collaboratively transcending age and gender and different disciplines of expertise, be participants. And so I think we're talking about, 25 years of time of refining this notion of, well, I just put something outside for people to see, to how do we create things collectively so that we're all engaged.
People become engaged because they care about something.
In all of this diversity, in all of this complexity, what would be a way that we could find some thread that complexity could connect to? And Pauli Murray became that symbol.
People now, because of the murals of Pauli Murray, will now begin to read about her or know who she is.
She is everything and nothing. She's African American, she's not African American. She's an academic, she's not academic. She's an advocate for peace, she's a revolutionary, she's a writer, she's been marginalized, she's been on the cover of Life magazine. So all of these pieces that literally and figuratively a lot of people could connect to, and using that as a major thread to build things to. Okay. Is that all right? Let me just roll it up.
One and two on the master.
Lord, we give you thanks for this beautiful day. Thank you for your blessings toward us. God, we thank you because you kept us through the night for all hurt, harm, and danger. Woke us up this morning able to see and speak for ourselves. Now we are gathered here together to have a good time. And let everybody say amen. 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 Amen.
The party has started.
Good morning, evening, friend. Here's your friendly announcer.
I'm getting ready to do some color.
I have serious news to pass on.
I think that the work of Face Up is going to show that. People actually live in these neighborhoods that care, that work, that play, and love one another.
Could mean the world's disaster.
Part of this work has been about building architectures where people can see themselves in each other.
Oh, we have quilting.
People are coming from all walks of life and sitting here and just piecing it together, one stitch at a time, which is what we're all trying to do.
And we have Seeds is giving out seeds and talking about gardening.
We work for Seeds, Southeastern Efforts Developing Sustainable Spaces. We're just handing out seeds.
Yeah. We have coloring on the murals. We have sketchbooks.
We've got the Scrap Exchange sponsoring our community monument project, so people can go and build their own community monument and put it on display, and there are all kinds of crazy materials from the Scrap Exchange. There's a labyrinth that's made out of shoes, and people have painted shoes and written things on shoes about community or their wishes for the world.
What is most important to them about community?
Education is the key. And I really believe in that. I'm a school teacher at Lakewood Elementary School, second grade.
We have music for dancing and chalk for coloring and a lot of fellowship.
Nothing like this happened when I was a child. So I think it's nice, and I think it's good for the neighborhood, and I think it's good for Durham.
These kind of events help us remember that we're all people. We all have blood coursing through our veins. We're all breathing the same air.
It's expression. It's ideas. Everybody has ideas, and everybody can express themselves.
You can do this. Anybody can do this. This is not about me. The lesson in this is not to be attached just to the objecthood, but practice another way of being in the world.
Brett refers to these pieces as the debris of our work together, that the pieces are not the thing, that the relationships are the thing, and that the community is the thing.
It's not a beginning, middle, and end. Yeah, Brett's appearance on our scene, absolutely. That particular influx of energy, absolutely. But this bigger goal of building a loving community, I hope it never ends.
If I keep on doing my work, and if Barbara keeps on doing her work, and if all of the people that participated in this project continue to do the work, you can't stop. You have to keep on tending it. That's what community is.
Okay. Let's look at our slides. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Okay. So back to slides. Cut the video. All right. My time is almost out. So, what's that make you think of? Belonging. Community. Caring, love, good answers. Let's look at our rubric. Living in mutual aid? Shared interests? A place to be seen? So let's look at their rubric. Fostering respectful partnerships. Where did you see that in the video? Anybody? Maybe for lack of time, let me share with you. So in Durham, there's this place called Trosa. It's kind of like the Delancey Street model around addiction. So they essentially are the infrastructure of Durham. They have a furniture store there. They clean Duke. They do all kinds of, part of the recovery model is that you go for a year, unlike a short-term one, and you learn a trade and you graduate with a savings account and a car. And so they make Durham go, except they're never, ever acknowledged. And so as the chair professor at Duke and UNC, we decided to really have them as a partnership. And typically, you know, as a fancy professor, they have a big event for you and you have drinks. And I said, look, we're never going to have drinks at anything we do so those people can be there. And so that is just one example. Thank you. But that's one example of when we talk about partnerships and ways that these things can really be embodied through the actions that we choose. Contemplative time. Where'd you see contemplative time? Okay, we'll come back to that. We'll come back to that. Labyrinth, someone said, but we'll come back. History and purpose. Where'd you see history and purpose? Pauli Murray. Raise your hand if you knew who Pauli Murray was. Okay, not too many. So Pauli Murray, and I got to finish quickly here. Pauli Murray was a woman born in Maryland but grew up in North Carolina in Durham. She wanted to go to UNC to go to school, couldn't go there because she was black. Ended up going to CUNY, and then when she wanted to go to law school, she wanted to go to Harvard, couldn't go there because she was a woman. Ended up going to Bolt, did a lot of the early Brown versus Board of Legislation work, wrote a book called Proud Shoes in '53, the first multi-ethnic account by women of color of the South. It's written by a woman of color in '53. She's writing about issues of gender, being a man trapped in a woman's body in the '50s. She's one of the women that starts the National Association of Women. And then in '77 goes back to Yale, get her PhD in Holy Orders, and becomes the first female Episcopal priest in the same church where her and her grandmother used to sit up in the balcony, and the same pulpit that had her grandmother's owner's name in the pulpit. So on the one hand, here's this person nobody knows about. And on the other hand, here's this giant person that everyone could connect to. And so just think about it. We're in Oakland. They don't have 5 murals of a queer person all over Oakland. And this is in Durham, where there is no mural tradition, where there isn't this kind of openness around gender, et cetera, et cetera. So to wrap up, my point being, all of these impacts came out of it, out of this project. And part of why I wanted to share this project, because this is 13 years ago. This is before the mayors even started writing about placemaking. This is before the great Roberto Bedoya started talking about placekeeping. This is 13 years ago. And part of why I wanted to share this with you today is that I could have just told you what to think about in terms of belonging or in terms of community, but part of the real understanding is getting to that in community together. And so, yes, we should have presentations. We should have conferences where people share their expertise. And part of my belief is that we also want to make spaces where we can all belong together. And finally, last two, here's Tree of Contemplative Practices. We talk about contemplative time. And here's my last slide. Here's her definition. True community is based upon equality, mutuality, and reciprocity. It affirms the richness of individual diversity as well as the common human ties that bind us together. In the spirit of community, I want to thank you for letting me be here with you today, and I hope this gives you some inspiration. Have a great afternoon.